The empire of Valora stood high above the silver clouds, its towers made of crystal and light. Ships moved through the skies like shining birds, carrying nobles, soldiers, and servants across floating platforms. The people of Valora were proud and strong. They believed their bloodline was pure and their rule eternal. At the heart of the empire sat the royal palace, and within it lived Mira, the daughter of King Raylan, ruler of all Valora. Mira was not like the others in her family. Where her father spoke of power, she spoke of peace. Where her brothers and cousins trained in combat, she studied the old stories of kindness and unity. The royal court called her strange. The king called her a problem. He could not understand why his daughter refused to act like a true heir of Valora. One morning, the king called Mira to his hall. The room was wide and filled with golden banners. Dozens of alien nobles stood around, their eyes watching every move. The king sat upon his throne, tall and proud, his crown glowing with red light. "Mira," he said in a deep voice, "the humans are coming today. They are weak creatures from a small world, but they bring machines we can use. You will stay away from them. They are not worthy of royal company." Mira bowed slightly but did not lower her eyes. "Father, they came to build friendship, not war. If we treat them with respect, we may learn from them." The king frowned. "Learn from humans? They still fight among themselves. They destroy their own world. What could they teach us?" "Maybe they can teach us humility," Mira said softly. A quiet gasp went through the court. The king's hand tightened on the arm of his throne. "You speak against me before my council. You forget your place." "I only speak for truth," Mira answered. "If we rule without compassion, our power will break one day." The king waved his hand in anger. "Enough. You will remain in your quarters while I meet these humans. I will not have you shame our house again." Mira bowed again and left, her heart heavy. As she walked through the marble halls, servants turned their faces away. Everyone knew the king's temper, and no one wished to be seen near his disobedient daughter. From her chamber window, Mira could see the landing platform. A ship made of metal and fire was slowly lowering itself to the palace deck. Its engines hummed softly, glowing blue beneath the silver sky. Small figures in gray suits walked out, humans from Earth. They were shorter than the Valorans, but their eyes were bright and alert. At the front of the human group walked a man named Aaron. He was not a soldier, but an engineer. His hands were covered with the marks of work, and his face showed calm focus. Mira watched as he looked around with quiet curiosity. He did not seem afraid, even though he stood among aliens who were far stronger than him. Something about him drew her attention. There was no pride in his movements, no arrogance. When he spoke to the Valoran guards, he smiled politely. When a young servant dropped a tool near him, he bent down to pick it up and gave it back with kindness. Mira felt a warmth in her chest. That evening, while the king held his meeting in the grand hall, Mira left her quarters secretly. She wrapped herself in a plain cloak and moved through the service tunnels under the palace. She wanted to see the humans with her own eyes. She reached the lower hangar where the humans had set up their repair stations. Small machines and drones hovered in the air. The smell of metal and oil filled the room. Aaron stood beside a large power core explaining something to a Valoran technician. His tone was patient and he used simple words, drawing small symbols on a tablet to show how energy could flow more smoothly. Mira stayed behind a column, watching. She noticed how his team worked together, humans helping each other with quiet words and steady hands. They were different from Valoran workers who followed commands without question. These humans shared ideas. They listened. They respected each other. When Aaron finished his talk, he turned slightly and noticed a shadow near the column. "Hello there," he said calmly. "Are you lost?" Mira froze for a moment, then stepped out slowly. Her cloak hid her royal dress, so he did not recognize her. "No," she said. "I was only watching." "Watching?" he asked with a smile. "We do not often have an audience. Do you like machines?" "I like what they can do when used with care," she said. "Not just for war," Aaron nodded. "Then we have the same thought. I fix things so they don't break again." "That is my work." Mira tilted her head. "You are not a soldier." "No," he said. "I build and repair. That is enough." Mira looked at his hands marked with small cuts and burns. "You work hard." He laughed softly. "It is better than sitting on a throne and doing nothing." She smiled. "You think thrones are easy?" "I think they are heavy," he said. "Heavier than any machine." His answer surprised her. She wondered if he somehow knew who she was. Before she could ask, the sound of boots echoed in the hall. Valoran guards entered, their armor shining. The lead guard shouted, "Who are you, stranger, to speak with a royal?" Mira stepped forward quickly. "He did nothing wrong," she said. "He was only explaining his work." The guard stopped. "Princess Mira?" Aaron's eyes widened in surprise. Mira removed her hood and stood tall. "Yes," she said. "And you will not harm him." The guard bowed stiffly. "The king ordered that no humans speak with you." "We must report this." Mira's voice turned firm. "Then report that I asked for knowledge, not rebellion." Aaron looked between them but said nothing. The guard stepped aside, allowing Mira to leave, but the tension in the air was thick. She turned to Aaron once more. "Thank you for your words. They gave me more than you know." He smiled faintly. Sometimes talking is more powerful than fighting. When she returned to her chamber, Mira knew the news would soon reach her father. But she felt no fear. Instead, she felt a spark of strength inside her. She had seen something rare in the humans, a quiet kind of courage that did not come from power but from heart. The next day, the king called her again. His face was cold. "You disobeyed my command," he said. "You spoke to them?" "Yes," Mira said calmly. "I did." He rose from his throne. "Why do you defy me at every turn? Do you wish to bring shame to our family?" "I wish to bring light," she said. "These humans may be weak, but they have something we lost. They care for one another. They fight only when needed. We could learn from them." The king shook his head. "You are blinded by sentiment. Power keeps us safe, not compassion. Power without compassion brings ruin," she said. "History proves it." The court murmured in unease. The king's voice thundered, "Enough! You are forbidden from leaving your chamber again while the humans remain here." Mira bowed without a word, but inside she made a silent promise. She would not stop seeking truth, even if her father refused to see it. That night, the city outside the palace glittered with light. Ships from the rival race of Varn approached in the distance, their signals hidden behind false codes. The guards did not notice, too busy celebrating the king's meeting with humans. Only Mira saw strange flashes beyond the horizon. She tried to warn her attendants, but they dismissed her worries. She looked once more out the window where the human ship rested on the landing deck. She saw Aaron moving among his crew, checking the engines. He looked up for a brief moment as if sensing her gaze and gave a small nod. In that single moment, Mira felt something shift inside her. She no longer felt alone in her belief. Someone else, even from another world, understood what she saw. The stars burned bright that night, but beneath their beauty, danger was moving closer. The king believed he had control of all things. Mira knew the truth. Control meant nothing when pride ruled the heart. And far across the shining clouds, the future of Valora began to tremble. The morning sun rose above the shining towers of Valora. Its light touched the silver walls of the palace and spread across the sky. Everything looked peaceful, but under that peace, danger was growing. The Varn Empire had gathered its fleet beyond the outer rings, hidden behind the dark side of the moon. They had waited for the right time to strike. Inside the royal palace, Mira stood on her balcony. She could see the long roads of crystal below and the great market where citizens began their day. Ships floated in the air, carrying goods from one platform to another. To any other eye, it was a perfect day, but Mira felt uneasy. The strange lights she had seen the night before were not stars. Something was coming. Lauren, her loyal servant, entered quietly. He bowed and said, "Princess, the king has ordered the shield test today. The humans have completed the main connections to our defense core." Mira turned. "Is the system stable?" Lauren shook his head. "The human engineer warned that it should be tested slowly. But the king believes our technology is strong enough to handle it." Mira sighed. "He sees warnings as weakness." "Tell me, Lauren, do you trust the humans?" The servant hesitated. "I do not know them, Princess, but their work has saved lives. They repaired the damaged water systems last week in less than a day." "Then they act with heart," Mira said. "And that is worth more than power." Later that day, she walked toward the central hangar where the humans were working. Soldiers at every gate looked surprised to see her but did not stop her. She was the princess after all. Inside the hangar, she found Aaron and his crew checking large glowing panels. Blue energy flowed through long cables that ran across the floor. The air smelled of heat and metal. Aaron looked tired but focused. Mira stepped closer. "You are working hard again. Aaron looked up and smiled lightly. The shield network must be perfect before testing. One mistake and the whole system can fall. You warned my father, did you not? She asked. He nodded. Yes, but I do not think he trusts me. I understand why. We are visitors from a smaller world. To him we must seem weak. You are not weak, Mira said. You act when others argue. That is strength. Aaron gave a small laugh. Maybe. But I have learned that words mean little when pride rules the room. Before she could reply, the ground beneath them shook. A loud alarm echoed through the palace halls. Red lights flashed across the walls. Soldiers began to shout, "What is happening?" Mira asked. A guard ran into the hangar. Enemy fleet approaching from the outer orbit. The Varn Empire has declared war. Aaron turned to his team. Secure the generators. We cannot let the power cores overload. Mira's eyes widened. They came this fast? No one warned us. Their ships hid behind the moon's shadow, Aaron said quickly. We have minutes before the first strike. They hurried toward the control tower. Outside the window, the sky had turned red. Flashes of light crossed the horizon. Varn ships fired plasma beams that fell upon the outer walls. The city shields flickered but held. In the war room, King Relin stood tall before the giant screen. Commanders shouted reports as the enemy fleet drew closer. Activate full defense, the king ordered. One officer hesitated. Sire, the human engineer said the system is not ready. The balance core needs adjustment. The king struck the table with his hand. I will not wait for human permission. Activate it now. Energy surged through the city. The shield towers glowed with intense blue light. For a moment, the defense field looked strong. Then the lights began to flicker. A high-pitched sound filled the air as pressure built inside the conduits. Mira and Aran reached the command floor just as an explosion shook the east wing. Smoke filled the hall. The energy flow is too high, Aaron shouted. It will destroy the main core. The king turned sharply. You again? You bring warnings but no victories. My city will not fall because of human fear. Mira stepped forward. Father, stop this. He is right. The shields cannot take this pressure. Be silent, the king said. This is a battle, not a classroom. Aaron ran to the control board and began typing commands. Sparks flew as he rerouted power lines. The system responded slowly. Mira stood beside him, helping where she could. The king's general stared at them, unsure what to do. Finally, the old commander said, Your Majesty, if the core explodes, the entire palace will fall. The king's pride broke for a moment. Do what you must, human. Aaron adjusted the final line and cut the extra power. The noise faded and the trembling stopped. The shield dimmed but held steady. Everyone in the room breathed again. Mira looked at the screens. The city below burned in several places. Varn soldiers had landed near the outer districts. Civilians ran through the streets. Father, the people need help, she said. The palace must be protected first, he said firmly. If we lose the palace, we lose Valora. If the people die, there will be no Valora to rule, she answered. Aaron looked between them. Princess, he is not wrong to defend this place, but your people need guidance. I can send my crew to help evacuate civilians. You can lead them. The king glared at the human but said nothing. After a long moment, he waved his hand. Go, do what you can. But the throne stays mine. Mira and Aaron ran through the smoke-filled corridors toward the city gates. Explosions shook the walls as pieces of crystal fell from the ceiling. They reached the lower levels where frightened citizens tried to escape. Stay calm, Mira shouted. Follow the light markers to the shelters. Move quickly but do not panic, her voice carried command. Even in fear, people obeyed her. Aaron and his team set up small drones that guided groups through the smoke. Soon enemy troops appeared in the streets. The Varn soldiers were tall and wore dark armor that glowed red. Their weapons fired beams that tore through walls. Mira grabbed a guard's fallen staff. She stood beside Aaron, her eyes steady. We must hold them back until everyone is safe, Aaron nodded. There is an energy bridge ahead. If we lead them across it, I can collapse it once they are on it. They moved through the burning streets, leading the enemy deeper into the industrial zone. Mira fought with fierce skill, striking enemies who tried to flank them. Aaron planted explosive charges along the bridge supports. Almost done, he said as he set the final charge. More Varn troops appeared at the far end. Mira raised her staff, blocking a blast and countering with a swift strike that sent one enemy falling. Aaron looked at her with quick respect. You fight like someone who has done this before. I learned from watching those who refused to kneel, she said. When the last civilian had crossed to safety, Aaron pressed the trigger. The bridge exploded in a wave of blue fire. The enemy soldiers were trapped on the other side as the structure collapsed into the river of light below. Smoke rose into the air. The ground shook beneath their feet. Mira coughed but smiled. We did it. Aaron checked his scanner. Yes, but they will return soon. We must go back to the palace before it falls apart. They hurried through the damaged streets. Fires burned around them and the sound of distant battle filled the air. When they reached the main gate, Valoran soldiers were carrying the wounded inside. In the great hall, King Relin waited. His armor was dented and his crown hung crooked on his head. He looked older than before, his pride shaken but not broken. You disobeyed me again, he said slowly. You left the palace during an attack. Mira's voice was steady. I saved our people. If I had stayed, they would have died. Aaron bowed. Your Majesty, the princess led with courage. Without her, we would have lost the lower city. The king stared at the human with cold eyes. You have caused enough trouble here. You and your kind will leave Valora at once. We will not depend on outsiders. Aaron said nothing. He looked at Mira. She met his gaze with sadness. She wanted to argue, but she knew her father's heart was locked by pride. As the guards escorted Aaron away, he turned slightly and said quietly, Princess, you have the heart of a leader. Do not hide it, she nodded. And you have the heart of a true friend. That night, the fires across the city slowly faded. The people began to rebuild even as the palace stood cracked and scarred. Mira walked through the courtyard where pieces of crystal lay scattered on the ground. She looked up at the stars. The human ship was preparing to leave. Its engines glowed softly in the distance. Lauren approached her. Princess, your father says the throne is safe now. Mira shook her head. The throne may be safe, but our spirit is not. We lost more than walls today. Lauren looked down. What will you do now? I will learn, she said. I will listen to those who wish for peace. One day Valora will rise again, not through fear, but through unity. As she spoke, the human ship lifted from the platform and began to rise toward the sky. Mira watched until it became a small light among the stars. She whispered softly, Thank you, Aaron. You saw strength in me when no one else did. She turned back toward the palace. The halls were broken, yet her steps were steady. The war had changed her. She was no longer only a princess who questioned orders. She was becoming something greater, something her father could never understand. Above the ruined towers, the night sky stretched endless and wide. Valora would never be the same again. The king had his throne, but the people had found a new kind of hope. And somewhere beyond the stars, a human carried that same hope with him, believing that one day, the princess who was once called a problem would rise as the warrior her world needed. The morning sun rose weakly over Valora. Smoke still rose from the great battle that had shaken the capital. The air was thick with dust and silence. Mira stood outside the palace gates, her hands bound in silver chains. The guard stood stiffly behind her. The king sat on his throne, his face cold and hard. He spoke in a deep, echoing voice. You disobeyed my command. You sided with outsiders. You brought shame to this family. Mira looked up, her eyes steady. I did what was right. The people needed help. I saved lives while you hid behind the throne. Gasps filled the hall. The king's eyes flashed with anger. Enough, you are no longer my daughter. You will leave this city by sunset. Never return. The chains fell from her wrists, but they left a deeper mark inside her heart. She turned and walked away. No one stopped her. Even those she had saved bowed their heads and said nothing. The heavy gates closed behind her with a sound that echoed like thunder. Outside the city walls, the land was broken. Houses were burned and fields were empty. Mira walked through the ruins until her legs gave out. She sat on a stone and watched the smoke rising into the sky. For the first time in her life, she had no home. Hours passed before she heard footsteps. She turned and saw Aaron, the human engineer. His clothes were torn and his hands were covered in grease, but his eyes were calm. I thought they sent you back to your ship, Mira said quietly. They did, he replied. But I didn't go. Mira frowned. Why? Because I couldn't leave you here alone, Aaron said. You were right. You fought for your people when no one else would. That kind of strength doesn't deserve to die in exile. Mira looked away. The king thinks I am a traitor. My people fear me. What can I do now? Aaron sat beside her. You can do what you always do, help them. You don't need a throne for that. Mira was silent. The idea sounded impossible. But something in Aaron's voice stirred her heart. For the first time in many days, she felt a spark of purpose. That night, they built a small fire among the ruins. The stars above Valora looked brighter than before. Aaron fixed a broken transmitter while Mira studied a rough map drawn in the dirt. Around them, shadows moved. Refugees, farmers, and children without homes began to appear. They had nowhere else to go. A woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Princess, we heard you were here. Our homes are gone." The guards refused to help. "Will you lead us?" Mira stood slowly. She looked at their tired faces and felt a surge of strength rise inside her. "I am no longer a princess," she said. "But if you will stand with me, I will not turn away." The people nodded. Hope returned to their eyes. In the days that followed, Mira and Aran began to rebuild the ruins. Aaron used old machine parts to create small energy towers that powered lights and water filters. Mira organized food hunts and built shelters using the remains of fallen ships. The people called their camp Haven. Word spread across the broken lands. Exiles, workers, and forgotten soldiers came to join them. They brought tools, scrap metal, and courage. Mira moved among them every day, helping with her own hands. Aaron often saw her lifting heavy beams beside laborers, her face covered in sweat and dust, but her eyes bright with determination. At night, they sat by the fire. Aaron told stories of Earth, of blue skies, oceans, and people who rebuilt their world after war. Mira listened closely. "Your world fell too?" she asked one evening. "It did," he said, "but humans don't give up. We make mistakes, but we always rise again. That's what makes us human." Mira smiled faintly. "Maybe that's what makes us the same." Weeks turned into months. Haven grew stronger. What began as a camp became a village of light and life. They planted crops in the ruined soil. They built schools for children. The sound of laughter returned to the night air, but peace never lasted long. Scouts reported that the rival race was preparing another invasion. The Valoran army was weak, and the king's court still argued while their borders fell. When Mira heard the news, she clenched her fists. "They will not stop," she said. "They will come again, and the king will do nothing." Aaron nodded. "Then we prepare. We have tools, we have people, and we have something stronger than the palace army. We have purpose." Mira gathered her followers. They trained with wooden weapons and learned how to fight together. Aaron built simple defense systems, traps, alarms, and barriers powered by recycled energy cells. At night, Mira stood at the edge of the camp, looking toward the city lights far away. She still loved her father, but she knew his pride would not allow him to ask for help. One morning, a messenger arrived from the capital. His clothes were torn and his voice was weak. "The king has fallen ill. The city is under attack again. They need help." Mira felt her heart twist. She turned to Aaron. "If I go, my people may lose everything here." Aaron shook his head. "If you don't go, many more will die. You taught them to stand on their own. They will protect Haven. Go where you are needed most." Mira took a deep breath. She looked around at the camp she had built, at the people who trusted her. "Then I will go," she said. "But I will not go as a princess. I will go as one of them." She gathered her armor made from scraps of alien steel and human design. It was light but strong. Aaron handed her a small device. "This will link you to me," he said. "If you need help, I will hear you." "Thank you, Aaron," she said softly. "For staying when no one else did," he smiled. "You gave me a reason to." When Mira reached the city gates, the guards hesitated. She was still in exile, but the sight of her small army behind her made them step aside. The people of Valora looked up as she passed, whispering her name. Some bowed, others simply watched with wide eyes. Inside the city, chaos ruled. Soldiers ran through the streets and fires burned in the distance. Mira led her fighters through the smoke, rescuing the wounded and pushing back the invaders. The people began to fight beside her. At the palace gates, she saw her father lying weak on the ground. The king looked up in disbelief. "You returned," he whispered. "I came for Valora," she said. "Not for the throne." With renewed courage, she led her people into the final defense. The humans joined through Aaron's signal, sending supply drones and guiding strikes from above. Together, humans and Valorans fought as one. By sunset, the city was safe again. The enemy withdrew, leaving their ships in flames. Mira stood on the palace balcony, watching the smoke rise into the sky once more. But this time it carried hope, not despair. The king approached her. leaning on his staff. His voice was tired but softer than before. "Perhaps I was wrong," he said. "Perhaps strength comes not from command but from compassion." Mira looked at him with calm eyes. "We are all learning," she said. That night she returned to Haven. The people welcomed her with cheers and open arms. Aaron met her at the edge of the camp, his face lit by the firelight. "You did it," he said. "No," she replied. "We did it. All of us." For the first time in a long while, Mira felt peace. She was no longer a princess or an exile. She was something greater. A leader born from the fire of struggle, a bridge between two worlds. As the stars shone above, Aaron looked at her and said quietly, "You see, Mira? The king saw a problem. But I was right. There was always a warrior within you." She smiled, and the wind carried their laughter across the night sky. Valora was no longer broken. It was reborn, not by a throne, but by the courage of those who chose to stand together. The weeks after the Varn attack were tense. Valora's city had survived, but the enemy fleet had not disappeared completely. Scouts reported movements beyond the outer rings. The king's army remained scattered and fearful, and the palace sat in quiet uncertainty. Mira, however, had not stopped. She worked tirelessly at Haven, training civilians and exiles alike to defend themselves. Every day more people came, inspired by stories of her courage. Aaron remained by her side, helping to build weapons, traps, and communication devices. He taught the Valorans to combine human ingenuity with their own technology. Together they created a small but formidable force, united not by birthright but by purpose. One morning Mira stood on the high cliffs outside Haven. She looked toward the capital in the distance. Smoke still rose from repairs in the city, and the sound of hammering filled the air. Soldiers moved along the walls, some watching her from afar. The king had sent no message, no sign of gratitude. Instead, he seemed distant, concerned only with his throne. Aaron approached quietly. "The Varn are moving again," he said. "They have rebuilt a small fleet near the asteroid belt. Scouts report their plan to strike the city within the week." Mira clenched her fists. "We cannot let them reach Valora." "The king may not act, but we must," Aaron nodded. "Your people trust you. I have seen what you have built here. If anyone can lead a defense, it is you." She looked at him, her eyes steady. "Then we do not wait. We strike first." The preparations began immediately. Mira divided her forces into 3 groups. One would defend Haven, one would lead attacks on enemy scouting parties, and the last would move toward the city to assist the civilians. Aaron worked with the engineers, constructing energy traps along the main roads and hidden defensive towers. Each night, Mira trained with her fighters. She taught them how to move quickly, how to communicate silently, and how to stay calm under fire. She reminded them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. During these nights, she often stood alone on a high ridge, looking at the stars. Aaron joined her sometimes, offering quiet advice or simply sharing the silence. "Your father does not understand you," he said one evening. "But that is not your burden. The people will follow the one who acts when others hesitate." Mira nodded. "I used to wish he would see me. Now I see that my purpose is larger than his approval." Days passed and reports came of small skirmishes. Varn ships were attacking villages on the outer rings. Mira led a group of exiles to defend a mining colony under threat. Using traps and tactical maneuvers, they forced the Varn to retreat with minimal losses. Her followers began to whisper her name with admiration, calling her a warrior of Valora. News spread quickly. Civilians in the capital began to resist the Varn soldiers occupying small districts. Refugees from surrounding areas joined Mira's cause. Her small army, once only a camp of exiles, now numbered in the hundreds. One morning, a scout returned with alarming news. "Princess, a large Varn fleet is approaching the capital. They plan a full assault." Mira's jaw tightened. "Then we must act now. Delay will cost lives." Aaron approached, holding a device that mapped the enemy's positions. "We can set traps along the main streets and use the energy towers to slow their advance. If we lead them into narrow zones, they cannot use their full strength." Mira studied the map carefully. "Then we divide the city into sectors. I will take the north gate with the main force. Volunteers will defend the east and west districts. You handle the traps and guides." Aaron hesitated for a moment. "It will be dangerous. The Varn soldiers are stronger and better armed." Mira placed her hand on his arm. "That is why we fight together. Fear will not win. We must trust each other." The preparation took hours. Traps were hidden in alleyways. Signals were placed on rooftops to communicate enemy movement. Mira's fighters carried supplies, built barricades, and practiced drills. By nightfall, the city was ready. When dawn came, the Varn fleet appeared on the horizon. Their ships were larger than before, casting long shadows over the city. Citizens ran in fear, but Mira stood atop the highest tower watching. Her armor reflected the morning light. "Hold your ground," she shouted to the volunteers. "We fight for Valora, for our people, and for those who cannot fight themselves. Stand together and we will survive." The first Varn soldiers landed near the North District. Mira's forces moved quickly, leading them toward narrow streets filled with hidden energy traps. As the soldiers advanced, the traps activated, slowing their progress and forcing confusion. Mira and her fighters struck from the shadows, using both skill and cunning. Aaron's drones hovered above, guiding attacks and sending messages to other groups. He directed reinforcements to sectors under heavy assault. Mira moved from point to point, encouraging her followers, striking down enemies with precision and inspiring courage with her presence. The Varn soldiers were strong, but Mira's army had something they could not match: unity and strategy. Each fighter knew their place. Their movements coordinated like a single organism. Citizens who had been hiding joined the fight, encouraged by the sight of the princess leading the charge. By midday, the city was filled with the sounds of battle, energy blasts, shouted commands, and the clash of weapons. Mira's forces had pushed the enemy back toward the southern gate. She paused atop a barricade and looked over the city. Fires burned, but people were alive and fighting. Her heart swelled with pride. Aaron appeared beside her on a rooftop. "They are retreating," he said. Mira shook her head. "Not yet. We must be careful. The Varn will try another path." She moved quickly, directing volunteers to guard key intersections. Her voice carried over the chaos. "Do not falter. Stay together. Protect the people." Hours later, the last Varn ship lifted from the city, their forces defeated. The streets were filled with exhausted but victorious citizens. Mira looked around at the rubble and the tired faces of her followers. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The king arrived unexpectedly. He had watched from a distance, hidden within the palace walls. Seeing Mira's army victorious and the city safe, his eyes widened in disbelief. He approached cautiously. "You did this," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Yes," Mira replied, "because no throne can protect the people. Only courage, unity, and action can do that." The king's pride battled with his awe. I did not see it before," he said. "You still do not understand fully," Mira said. "It is not about me. It is about everyone who stands together. Leadership is not about orders. It is about action and heart." The king lowered his gaze. "Then you have taught me. Perhaps I have much to learn." Mira did not respond. She turned toward Haven, thinking of the people there who had trained and prepared for this day. They had followed her even when the world called her an outcast. At night, the city celebrated quietly. Fires were lit in the streets. People sang songs of survival and courage. Mira walked among them, sharing smiles, words of encouragement, and quiet thanks. Aaron joined her. "You were amazing today," he said. "I have never seen anyone lead like that." Mira shook her head. "I only did what needed to be done. The people around me made it possible. They are the real heroes," Aaron smiled. "And yet without you they may not have believed in themselves. You gave them hope." She looked up at the stars. "Hope is stronger than fear. That is what I have learned." In the following days, word of Mira's victory spread across the outer planets. Refugees from distant towns arrived, seeking guidance and protection. Her army grew stronger, not in size alone, but in spirit. They trained, built defenses, and prepared for the day when the Varn might return. Mira knew that this was only the beginning. The enemy would not give up easily, and the city needed constant vigilance. But she also knew that Valora had changed. It was no longer a city ruled by fear and pride. It was a city inspired by courage, compassion, and leadership born from action. Standing atop the palace balcony, Mira watched the sunrise once more. Her armor reflected the golden light. She was no longer simply an exiled princess. She was a warrior, a leader, and a symbol. A human had shown her that strength came from heart and courage, not only from birthright. The king approached her again. "Perhaps I was wrong," he said softly. Mira turned to him, her voice calm but firm. "It is not about being right or wrong. It is about doing what must be done. Your people are alive. That is what matters, the king nodded. Then I will learn from you. Mira smiled faintly. Then one day Valora will be stronger than ever. Above the city, the stars shone bright as if celebrating the rise of a new kind of warrior. One who fought not for power but for the people. One who inspired courage in all who followed. And far away, Aaron watched from Haven, knowing that the princess he had believed in all along had truly become the leader her world needed. Valora was no longer just a city. It was a testament to unity, hope, and the warrior within. The sun rose slowly over the city of Virith. The smoke from the night battle still floated in the air, but the sky was clear and warm. The broken towers and cracked walls stood as a reminder of the great fight that had taken place. People filled the streets. Some cried for the ones they lost, and others smiled because they were free. The sound of victory mixed with the soft wind that moved through the ruined gates. Lyra walked through the central road in her worn armor. She had a long cut on her left arm and a burn on her shoulder, but she walked straight with her head high. Every step she took made the people cheer louder. Children ran to follow her. Old soldiers who had hidden during the first attack now stood proud again. Farmers who had never held a weapon saluted her like she was the highest commander in the land. Aaron walked beside her. His flight suit was covered with ash and dust. His face was tired but calm. He carried his helmet under his arm. When he looked at the people of Virith, he felt something deep in his heart. They were no longer afraid. They had found hope, and that hope had a name. Lyra. The royal gate of the palace stood open. The king had fled to the inner court when the enemy ship started to fall. His gold banners were torn. The guards who had once stood proudly now kept their heads low. The smell of burned metal filled the air. The council of elders stood in a line near the gate. They watched Lyra as she walked toward them. The king stepped out from behind the guards. His fine robe was stained with dust and his golden crown looked heavy on his head. He tried to smile, but it was weak. His voice shook as he spoke. "My people," he said, "we have won the day. Our brave army has defended the land. I thank you for your strength and faith. Virith is safe because of the kingdom's power." The people were silent for a short moment. Then a loud voice came from the crowd. "It was not your army," a woman shouted. "It was Lyra." Another voice joined. Lyra led the defense. "Lyra saved us." Soon the entire crowd began to chant her name. The sound grew like a storm. The king looked around in fear. His hands trembled. He had never felt such power coming from his people. For many years he had ruled through fear and control, but now the people did not look at him with respect. They looked at Lyra with trust. Aaron stood a step behind her and whispered, "The people have chosen their voice." Lyra looked at the king. Her eyes were steady. She did not speak at once. She let the voices of the people grow. She knew this moment was not about her pride. It was about their future. The council leader, an old man with silver hair, raised his hand to calm the crowd. He looked at Lyra with clear eyes. "Lyra," he said, "you were called a problem. You were pushed away from the royal guard. But last night you stood against a great enemy. You led the defense when others ran. You gave our people courage. This kingdom cannot return to the old ways. We need a protector who fights for the people, not for the throne," the king shouted. "I am the ruler of Virith. You cannot take that away from me." The old man faced the king without fear. A ruler who hides in the shadows when the city burns has already lost his crown. The people have spoken. The council agrees. Lyra will be the new protector of Virith. You will step aside. The guards around the king lowered their weapons. Some even nodded in silence. They had followed orders out of duty, but they had seen the truth with their own eyes. They knew who had truly defended their home. The king looked small now. He dropped the crown from his hand. It fell on the stone ground with a sharp sound. He turned and walked away with no words. Lyra stood still. She had not expected this moment to come so fast. For many years she had lived as the unwanted one. She had trained alone and believed her worth was nothing in the eyes of those who ruled. Now the entire city shouted her name. The old man stepped forward and held out a silver band with the symbol of the protector. It was not a crown. It was a mark of duty. "Lyra of Virith," he said. "Do you accept the duty to protect this land and its people with honor and courage?" Lyra looked at Aaron. He gave her a firm nod. His eyes were calm but proud. She turned back to the council and the people. "I accept," she said in a strong voice. "But I do not fight for power. I fight for every child who deserves to grow free. I fight for every farmer who worked the land with no hope. I fight for this world that gave me a name even when the palace called me nothing. I will stand between Virith and any shadow that tries to take it again." The crowd roared. They lifted their hands and shouted her name. Some cried with joy. Soldiers knelt. Farmers raised their tools like banners. For the first time in many generations, the people of Virith felt united. The old man placed the silver band on her arm. It fit perfectly. Arun stepped forward and raised her hand. The crowd grew louder. Later in the evening, the city lights burned bright. The enemy ships had been dragged out of the sky and broken down for scrap. Aaron sat with Lyra near the edge of the ruined wall. They looked up at the stars. The soft wind carried the smell of smoke and new hope. "You changed everything," Aaron said. Lyra shook her head. "No, the people changed everything. I only stood where they could not. I only showed them that fear can break if you stand together." Aaron smiled. "That is why they follow you. A leader who does not seek power is the one they trust." Lyra turned to him. "And what about you? Will you leave when your ship is ready?" Aaron looked at the stars. "The war is bigger than Virith. The enemy will return. But now I know we are not alone. I came to find allies. I found a warrior. I found hope here. When I leave, I will not be taking it away. I will carry your story to others." She was silent for a moment. "I will fight when they return. This world will not bow again." Orin nodded. "I know." A group of children ran past them with small wooden swords. They shouted her name and pretended to fight the enemy. Lyra watched them and smiled. She had grown up with no one calling her a hero. Now the next generation would grow up with hope. The next day, the council gathered in the central hall. The enemy's technology was placed on tables for study. Arun shared his maps of the stars with the new defense leaders. He showed them where the alien empire was spreading and where the human resistance was building its line. Lyra stood at the head of the table. Her armor was polished. Her band of protectors shone in the morning light. "We cannot wait for the enemy to strike again," she said. "We must build our defense now. We must train more fighters. We must build ships that can reach beyond our world. If we stand alone, we will fall. If we stand together with others, we can win." The council members agreed. One by one, they offered support. Farmers offered to help build supply lines. Scientists offered to work with Aaron on new weapons. Young fighters volunteered to join her new defense force. The city that had once called her a problem now called her their protector. Aaron stood beside her and watched the change grow with every voice in the room. Weeks passed. The city rebuilt faster than anyone expected. New walls were raised stronger and higher. Ships were built with parts from the broken enemy fleet. Training fields were full of volunteers. Lyra trained with them every morning. She did not sit on a throne. She stood in the dirt with her people. She swung her blade with them. She taught them to fight with courage and discipline. Aaron worked with the engineers to improve his ship. He added new shields and faster engines. He prepared to leave for the next system, but he knew he would return. On the last night before his journey, Lyra and Aaron stood at the city gate. The stars stretched far across the black sky. The rebuilt towers shone with soft lights. "You will go," Lyra said. "But you will not be forgotten here," Aaron smiled. "And you will not be alone. The galaxy will hear what happened on Virith. More will rise like you. The enemy will see that humans and their allies are not weak." Lyra raised her hand and placed it on his arm. "Then go and tell them. Tell them a problem became a warrior." Aaron nodded once, then walked toward his ship. The engines came to life with a low hum. The crowd gathered to watch him leave. Lyra stood at the gate with the silver band on her arm. The ship lifted into the sky and vanished into the stars. Lyra turned back to the people of Virith. She raised her hand high. The people cheered. They were no longer afraid. Their world had a protector, and the galaxy now had a new name to remember. Lyra of Virith, the warrior the king once called a problem, the warrior a human had seen for what she truly was.